Welcome to the Road to 100 Million in Real Estate podcast, where you'll benefit from the opportunity to learn to become a skillful real estate investor. You'll get guidance from top industry producers, operators, and investors who are eager to help you learn from their proven strategies of success. Now to your host, Dorrance Constant.
Hey, welcome everyone to another episode of the Road to $100 Million in Real Estate podcast. My name is Dorrance Constant. I'm your host. I'm really excited to have you here today because we've got another special treat. We've got Corey Chonskey. Corey, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right, folks, a little bit about Corey. Corey is retired from the Navy in 2021. Since then, he dedicated himself to real estate investing and apartment syndication. He is a co-founder of Fairwinds Capital, where they have a portfolio of just over $100 million in assets under management. Again, Corey, welcome to the show.
Yeah, like I said, excited to be here. Excited to talk real estate.
All right. Well, Corey, man, first of all, I want to start the show by thanking you for your service, man. It means a lot to us. And I'd love to hear more. Like, what was the story behind you being in, the Naval Academy to that going another direction into real estate? What was the motivation behind that?
Yeah, so I actually came in, got my commission through a program called Seaman the Admiral. I didn't go to the Naval Academy, so I started out as an enlisted member in the Navy, and then got commissioned through the University of Wisconsin, where I spent the last almost 15 years of my career, moving around to different assignments, working my way up the officer chain from having worked my way up on the enlisted chain. Yeah, the idea, and I've kind of talked about this is like people that I coach or mentor or just, talk real estate with. It's one of those things that when you're in the Navy, you do kind of turn over some control of your life. I mean, you don't necessarily get to choose where you move and stay and necessarily what jobs you're going to have. There's some say that you have into it, but in the end, when the Navy gives you orders, I mean, that's basically what it is. It's orders to go do a job, go move to a certain place. So really, to me, what drove me to real estate was the idea of finding something that will allow me to take back control of my life. And so that was, I got the idea of investing in real estate from one of my senior enlisted members that back when I was a junior enlisted sailor down in Charleston, South Carolina, talked about how he was an investor in real estate and how he was going to become a millionaire by the time he turned 40. So that little nugget always kind of like stuck with me. And then as I worked my way through my Navy career and, getting moved, from the West Coast to the East Coast, back to the West Coast, that was something that I wanted to kind of put in place for myself. And so I started with my first home that I purchased through a VA loan up in Washington State. When I moved away from Washington to Washington, D.C., I turned it into a rental, and that's kind of where I started. It took me a few years after that to then buy my next rental. But then, several rentals followed quickly thereafter. And so the next several years, I was just building my own personal portfolio. And I kind of got into a place where I was like, I realized that I could go do this full time due to what I was putting in place once I left the Navy.
Gotcha. So you wanted more control, and you felt like real estate was the way to do that. And then, and dually, you mentioned someone that one of the folks you were connected with was on his way to become a millionaire by the age of 40, right? And it's interesting. There's a fact out there, a stat out there where it says 90% of millionaires have some types of real estate origins, right? So that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, a question. So when you were investing, it seems to be some big leap, and we want to fill in the gaps, right? You started with a VA loan at one of your properties, at your first initial property, to now owning, nearly $100 million in assets. So help us understand, what were some of those building blocks that brought you to the place where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't give it all away at the beginning of the show. I mean, we want to make sure everyone's around to the end, right?
Right.
So yeah, exactly. I started with my VA loan. I was able to come in. We purchased our home for, with no money down using a VA loan. lived there for a couple of years, got stationed, and then, just kind of paid down the equity with, the tenants that we moved in. Between that, when I bought my next house, I started building my own capital through, stocks and, mutual funds. Not that I would necessarily use mutual funds these days, but kind of just building that available cash so that when I was in a position that I could, invest in real estate again, that I would have the money available to do that. So that's kind of filled in the next several years as I moved, quickly between duty stations. I wasn't really anywhere that long. And then I moved to where I'm currently located, which is Norfolk, Virginia. And I was actually supposed to go out to San Diego, but the Navy changed their mind and decided to send me to Norfolk as opposed to San Diego. So kind of upset about that, but we figured the silver lining is that we'd probably have a better chance of investing in real estate here in the Hampton Roads area than we would have in San Diego. So we moved here. We bought our home that we actually still live in today with a VA loan as well. And then a month later, we closed on our first true real estate property that we never lived in. It was just a straight rental from day one. And I slowly started building my portfolio, with one house at a time. And then, from there, I bought several, single family rental properties into then, duplexes and quads. And then I slowly got to a point where I was able to purchase, considered like a small real estate property. It was 8 units and 12 units. And then you kind of get to a point there, even if you're using a strategy where a lot of your capital can get trapped in the equity of properties because you may not be able to get all that money out. And so I was in a position where I was like, well, do I wait a couple more years, or what can I do to continue to go purchase real estate? Because, once you've done this for several years, you're kind of like, there's still good deals out there. I want to go get them. So that kind of then led me to, partnering with other real estate investors. And that then led me to doing my first syndication, which was a small portfolio syndication here in Norfolk, Virginia. I think it was 24 units across just a couple of different properties in Ocean View, which is kind of a more up and coming neighborhood here. It's going through a lot of renovations across the whole neighborhood. So we bought a portfolio with some limited partners and performed pretty well with that portfolio. And then those partners that helped me create that portfolio, we decided to continue to do that under the name Fairwinds Capital Investments. So there's 4 of us total. Three of us were involved with that first syndication deal. And then that led us into Fairwinds Capital Investments and building our Fairwinds portfolio.
Gotcha. So it sounds like when you were going through that process, you were able to pick up several properties. You were having some success, which was great, but then you found yourself limited. You mentioned the strategy that, a lot of us may not be familiar with, right? The BRRRR method. I'd love for you to talk about that and, what in that process just really stagnated you.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it stagnated me. I think it helped me to continue to grow my portfolio because I would come in, I would buy a property. A lot of times they were auction properties here in the local area where I'm located. And so I would buy it, I would rehab it, put anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 into this property. Actually, one of the homes I have now, I bought it for like $49,000. It's probably worth over $200,000 now. So, but at the same time, depending on the type of loans that you're using, you're only going to be able to get out a certain LTV. And so, I was lucky enough with some of my properties where I was able to refinance out all of the capital that I put into it.
Okay.
But I would say that, there's always going to be some equity that gets left into the property typically. And unless you're just always getting, 50, 60% off, which would be great. That's not necessarily always the type of deal that's available depending on where you're looking. I felt like I did pretty well in terms of buying property under their market value, then, adding that forced appreciation to the property to really increase the value. But, in the end, when you turn around and refinance it shortly thereafter, it might be 6 months or so, a lender is going to be somewhat limited in terms of what they're going to give you into that. So really some of my funds would get trapped in a deal. But at the same time, I was still able to pull out a lot of funds, and I was able to then continue that process where I ended up, purchasing like 30 properties of my own in that process. But yeah, eventually you'll get to a point where you want to make sure you maintain a certain working capital so that you can always take care of that portfolio that you've already closed on while also trying to expand. And so I just got up to a point where I felt more comfortable with the capital that I was having to maintain my own personal portfolio, and then be able to use funds with partner funds to then close on future deals.
Gotcha. So let's talk about some of that transition. So when you started moving away from a single family and duplexes, and you started actually moving into the larger deals, were there any mental roadblocks or limiting beliefs that stopped you from doing it from the beginning, or anything of that sort?
Yeah, and you'll hear a lot of people that talk about how, hey, just jump right into multifamily. It's the same amount of work whether you're buying a small property versus a 100+ unit apartment complex. I think there are some limiting beliefs there. In terms of how I did it, I think it was an appropriate step up, right? So I purchased I think the largest one I purchased on my own before I started using partners was a 12-plex. And so after that, the first syndication we had, it was a total of 24 units. And it was a couple of buildings that made that up. So it wasn't like a drastic mindset shift for me. The big thing that was a mindset shift for me was the capital raising, right? I always had my own capital available, and then I could go and deploy that however I wanted. Where in this instance, even though I did put capital into the deal, I had to go out and raise capital from people that I know, and they're obviously sophisticated investors, but it was a 506B deal, so I had to just use my own network in order to come up with that capital and go put it into the deal. And so, people have always heard me talk about real estate, so they knew I was into it, but I just never really got into the point where I was looking to raise capital. So that was probably the biggest limiting belief, and to me, really the most difficult part of that transition.
And what helped you get over it? And when you were going through that process, because either way you had to raise capital, right? Whether it be you or someone on a team. So what was your breakthrough and results from that?
So, I mean, we raised all the capital we needed for the deal, so that was a big positive. What I realized going into that is that I was really poor at networking with other investors. So I had to go out and find partners of like-minded individuals that were also interested in real estate, but kind of were in a similar spot as me, looking to kind of expand their portfolio through partnerships. And so that's where two of my partners came in. They had a little bit better networking capabilities than I did at that point. And so they helped come in and raise capital. And again, it's one of those concepts of, do you want 100% of nothing, or do you want to split the pie and still get the pie? So that was kind of big for me. But it also put me out there. Like I got used to the concept of making calls, connecting with people with the concept of, hey, I have an investment opportunity for you, and, pitching deals, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. And help us understand, how did that look to you when you first started, speaking with investors, maybe some of the things you had in your mind of how those conversations would go and how they actually went?
It was I put together my first pitch deck, and looking at our pitch decks today compared to then was like, night and day. It was just like, you could tell, like, oh, I just used PowerPoint and put pictures in there. But I really learned and improved my ability to analyze properties as I started to talk to people and get that feedback. Before, all the feedback I needed to get was my own, and talking to the people that I was part of my team in regards to, like, hey, this is a deal I like, what are your thoughts? And that's completely different than offering material together and going out and talking to investors. And so it was really, that was the thing, is like not understanding what sort of questions other people would have, because I was never an LP prior to being a GP. I had operated my own portfolio and had an asset management of my own deals. But at the same time, that's different than when you got to go and you pitch the deal to other people to bring their money into what you're then going to operate. So I think I was able to communicate that I had effectively managed a portfolio before. It was just kind of more making sure I had all the notes that they would then ask about, what goes into the property, what are you going to do to the property, what does this mean for me, what are my returns going to be, and so just really having all that stuff nailed down as you went in front of those investors was definitely a learning curve that I had to work through.
Absolutely. I understand that for sure. Because oftentimes some folks may think, hey, when I'm, attracting investors, this is a truly a sell, right? Some kind of a hard push sell. But in fact, when we're talking to investors, this is oftentimes is more of a educational call, so they could understand, hey, what's we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're going to execute it, and giving them opportunity to ask questions. And oftentimes, the investors are going to decide whether they want to or not. But it's not a high pressure call to invest, Wolf of Wall Street type of a call, or in many cases, like we do, webinars, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that after webinars, there should definitely be follow up with those investors. And in reality, what you're looking to do is obviously you want to explain everything about the deal to them. You want to make sure that they don't have any questions that are unanswered. Because a lot of times you don't want it to be a pushy sales call, but at the same time, if you're not following up with people, then it's definitely going to be a no. So you at least kind of want to get to them to a point of like, hey, would you like to invest or not? If this has been a deal for you, what are the type of deals that you would be interested? And so really it's you're looking for that opportunity to learn about that investor more, and then see if the deals that you are finding and that you're pursuing fit into their investment strategy.
Awesome. So let's talk about Fairwinds Capital. What are some of the larger projects you folks have worked on since its inception?
So we have a couple of deals that we are a part of. So I mean, like a lot of the groups, we're either lead sponsors or sometimes we'll come in as co-GPs. So the largest deals that we are lead sponsors on is 121 and 134 unit. And then we are co-GPs on one that's 117 unit and another one that is going from a hotel to multifamily conversion that will be around 240 units when we're all said and done with it. So that's kind of the scale. I mean, we still don't mind smaller properties just because, here, especially here in Norfolk, we have an area where we bought that first portfolio syndication that we really like. We think that there's still a lot of room for that neighborhood to improve, across the board. But you're not going to get, a 200 unit apartment complex in that area usually, unless you go and, tear a whole bunch of stuff down. So, I mean, we still do keep our eyes open on smaller deals, but those are the largest deals that we've done so far.
Awesome. And you mentioned you were doing some of these the multifamilies, but now you're actually doing a hotel conversion. I know that's been a hot topic. Why did you folks decide to do a hotel conversion?
So a group that we know, they brought in, or they are the ones that went under contract with it. They actually closed it, but they didn't complete their capital stack. So they wanted us to come in and close that, capital gap. And so it was a group that really trusted. We had really good connections to them. And we were connected to them by other folks that, have been in real estate a long time that we also, have really strong connections to. And so after learning about the deal, it was something that we weren't necessarily super strong with, but it created an opportunity where we could get into an area that, creates a different, avenue for us to go chase other deals. And so we wanted the opportunity to learn from a group that, they do this on a consistent basis. They, this is more of their bread and butter type deal. And so, like I said, it created an opportunity where we could learn something from a real expert in that real estate niche, that if we went and tried to do this on our own later, these would be the guys that would be advising us. So
Wonderful, wonderful. And what are the goals for Fairwinds Capital?
so right now it's really to navigate this, these choppy waters that we're in right now. It's, so we're still kind of a smaller group. We don't necessarily just want to go jump into any deal that could get us into trouble here. So really we want to continue to grow our portfolio, provide good opportunity for investors to, earn good returns. it just can be tricky right now. It's like we became, really familiar with the Houston market, but we're not necessarily looking to get into the Houston market in terms of other deals at the moment, just because a lot of things that have shifted in the market. So really, we're kind of reevaluating what is going on across different markets in the country right now, and seeing kind of where it makes sense to kind of move into. We do have a couple of smaller deals that we are looking to close out, but can't really discuss those because those are 506B deals. But yeah, I mean, in terms of our next large purchase, we continue to evaluate deals, but nothing on the horizon at the moment.
Awesome. Gotcha. It's always important, right, to be thinking about what the next steps are. But at the same time, and the vision is, but at the same time, not sacrificing the long-term vision for potential short-term gains that could, potentially, take you off course, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, we're winding down the show. Got another question for you, though. If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing in your business, what would it be and why?
Interesting question. So I would say it's kind of, I would say really, I would target that towards improving our own capital raising efforts, right? Now, granted, right now it's difficult for a lot of people to raise capital just because of the uncertainty in the market. So, I mean, there's 4 of us. We do have one person that's, really dedicated to raising capital. But if there's something that I would make more efficient in our company right now, I believe it would be towards capital raising. Because even when you're still kind of with a smaller group, you are still somewhat reliant on maybe bringing in partners to help you raise that capital. And it's good to have partners, right? Like, we enjoy working with all the partners that we have. But at the same time, it'd be better and more efficient across the board if we were able to be more reliant on our own internal capital raising efforts.
Gotcha. Okay. Great. Yeah, definitely understand that. So is there anything that you're working on that you're excited about, or you feel like our audience should know about?
Yeah. So kind of separate from Fair Winds, I'll be starting a coaching consulting firm more dedicated towards folks that are looking to kind of build their portfolios similar to the way that I did, where you're starting with modest means, and you're looking to kind of start in and then build your own portfolio so that you can take back some more control of your own life. And so it'll be geared more towards military investors, but a lot of the tips, strategies that will be put in that will be valuable to any investor that's looking to get started along that path. So the strategy would be called One House at a Time. And, I'll be starting my own podcast where I'll bring people on to, coach and discuss how their journey is going. So looking forward to starting that here in the very near future.
Awesome. So keep us posted so we can push that out to our audience. And, you dropped a lot of gems today. I'm sure our folks are going to want to keep in contact with you. So what are the best ways for them to reach out to you, Corey?
Yeah, so I'm active on Twitter under, you just search Corey Chonskey. You should be able to find me. On LinkedIn, you can find me there. We have our own website, which is www.fwcinvestments.com. We also have accounts on Fair Winds accounts on LinkedIn and Facebook as well.
Well, awesome. Again, Corey, thanks for coming on the show today, man. You've been able to really, express your vision, your thoughts on the past, and where you guys are going. So thanks for being super transparent with us, and we really appreciate having you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciated coming on and talking real estate.
We trust that you enjoyed today's show. Visit archcapital.ventures to learn more about how you can leverage real estate investing to improve your life through passive income, financial freedom, and generational wealth.